start the recording. So we'll have a little pre-show shit. So, I mean, we could pop at the beginning. There would be the noise.
Yeah.
And talk about stuff later.
Tell you what, because I was going to do the quietest that I could to be proper.
Well,
so,
I'll also be playing the Diamond Club promo, which is loud. This. I am so grateful that Children's Miracle Network provided a CT scanner to the hospital in Halifax where my husband had surgery to rebuild his leg. So that, and then when that ends, and that's like 50 seconds or something, could do the pop. And then we could be pouring while our intro plays. Tipple theory is an exploration of the history and practice of creating... What?
So if you're gonna properly open champagne, it shouldn't pop.
Yeah, it's not gonna make a big noise.
It should just be like a little baby's fart.
Mm-hmm. What I was taught is I put a towel over it just in case, and I basically twist it out. And it just kind of goes thunk, you know. It doesn't. I don't shoot it across the room and all that stupid shit.
No, that's bad. It's bad for you. It's bad news bears. But like I was just saying, like you won't hear it at all over the over that stuff, which is fine.
But if you want to demonstrate, then we could wait until we actually start the show. Could just do the wait, look. Hello and welcome, and then the pitch for the charity and our Patreon, and then right when you can do the... And today is the origin of the New Year's Eve champagne toast, and as a public service, I'm going to show you how to properly open a bottle of champagne right now. Do that, and then go into the show.
So we'll do that, and then play the intro.
No, after all that, like
okay.
right when you say what the topic is, after we all do all the introduction stuff and the notes, when it gets to today's topic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Do it there.
Sure.
Okay.
Open the champagne.
I should go see what's going on with this stream. I should open mine so I can see when that's happening. Had a great time this morning. Holy crap.
Real?
It was fun, and the donations, I ended up exceeding the goal. Awesome. And so I turned it into a milestone and upped the goal.
Let's go. That's great.
Yeah, somebody dropped a $250 anonymous donation.
Jeez, $250. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a goal of 500 for the whole day, and we hit 510 in the morning stream. It was the number one raiser on the team until Trisha Hirschberger went on and just slaughtered. But I think I'm still number 2. And we have a whole stream to do with our much anticipated podcast,
which is up.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I can't remember how. It's been a while since I've set up a new page for a podcast, and I couldn't do as much like with the actual like episode, the players and everything until it was published. but I still forgot stuff. I'm like, oh no, how did I embed a player in my last web page? It's been a while.
Ooh, I've got it in Apple
honestly,
Podcasts
eventually,
now.
It's on Apple Podcasts now?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, that one, and that was, I swear they changed the icon resolution requirements, because now it's like 3000 by 3000. I was like, oh, fudge. I had 2000 by 2000. Yay! On there.
Cool.
Should be on Apple, Spotify, Google.
So now we gotta set up the Patreon RSS and figure out how that differs.
Wait for Patreon to access the RSS, not an RSS, a separate
Well, we can set up
for...
a separate Patreon RSS. And I don't know. We gotta figure that out. It's gonna be the same feed or a slightly different feed. Because you can do it so it's a slightly different feed. So that stuff like, do we want to take this episode and release it into as a podcast, but just to the Patreons, or do we want to put it in the regular podcast feed? Because when we do special episode stuff, that's something that would be in the Patreon RSS feed, but not the regular one.
Yeah, I've never done that.
And what happens there is, because I've got it on a couple other shows, is it why do I keep getting crooked? What the hell is going on? There. It'll you just take that RSS and put it in your podcatcher. And then, I've got two different feeds. I've got the Sleep With Me one, and then I've got the Sleep With Me Patreon one, which is stuff without ads. Or bonus content, like the All Around Science one. Bobby does other little recordings that only go into the Patreon feed. So I'm not sure how all that works. I mean, we'll get all the RSS moving smoothly and before figuring that out. I mean, I can just have Patreon use the one we have and not worry about that at all. But it would be nice to have for bonus content.
Yeah.
But there's no restriction on us using this as an episode. If you want to. It's even in the how-to stuff for this event. If you're going to use this podcast, just use the Streamathon link, the generic one, because that'll be maintained and updated when it switches to 2024 at 3 in the morning. Or I can create another ExtraLife page, and then they'll update it at their thing. So it'll keep working, which is what I intend to do. One time I did this stream at 3 in the morning, and my thermometer was like, I'm almost at goal, and then it looked like I made nothing, because it switched years, because it was the ExtraLife time zone midnight.
Cruel.
Okay, they're going to be rating us any minute. They're showing him how to do a raid. Okay. I will be interrupting here and there. I don't know if you have the stream open to see the chat.
Oh, I don't. Wait, where is the stream?
Twitch.tv/9f12.
You're going to be interrupting your own stream?
The show? Yeah, no, because there's stuff that goes on during the show, in the middle of the show, an hour will be hit, and it will be New Year's for a bunch of places. And Renego is going to pop into our chat and say, 1 minute to New Year's in, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, blah, 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 list. And then we jump in and we, stop the show for a minute and say, Happy New Year! And I'll play this and read off the... I'm going to turn that up. And we'll read off all the Happy New Year's for those and put in some links to stuff. And yeah. And then we'll continue with the show.
Gotcha.
So either have the chat open and watch for that, or I'll say, hey, wait. And you can edit it out later or not.
That's a good one.
And watch for this raid coming in. Is the raid coming in? Yes, the raid is coming in. Let's watch for the raid. Where's the raid?
Where's the thing? Shoot. I lost my thing.
Woohoo! Speakeasy Pub Quiz. Thank you for doing this charity stream today with the Diamond Club. They're rating us right now with a party of 36. Go! Hey Renego, hey W Scottis. I do want to thank everyone who donated to my stream this morning while I've got ya. Whoops. Let me get to the right page. We had an anonymous donation of $250 flying out, donated 55, Red Fraggle 100, the Gen 25, Ren donated 5. We exceeded our goal of $500 this morning, and so I moved up the bar like you do. And we have a goal of $1,000 today, so let's hit it. Let's do this. Let's do this for the children. I am so grateful that Children's Miracle Network provided a CT scanner to the hospital in Halifax where my husband had surgery to rebuild his legs when he was a child.
We party with a purpose.
It's the 9th annual Diamond Club New Year's Eve Streamathon.
We're going to raise some money for the Children's Miracle Network.
And because no one should do New Year's Eve alone.
It is with this glorious and mighty purpose that brings us to you on this fine day.
You can help sick kids have a happy new year.
And just have a great time. I definitely want to be a part of that.
Always fun that we get to do this charity event each year.
And raising money for ExtraLife is just a really good excuse to hang out with online friends.
Go to dcstreamathon.org and donate now.
Thanks for helping out the kids.
On the Diamond Club New Year's Eve Streamathon.
Love you all. See you soon.
Woohoo! I have to mention my husband is in the chat, the one who I referred to in the beginning of that wonderful stinger that Big Voice Jay made for us, who had that surgery, saying that we have to meet this goal, or Sean here, my co-host, Sean Weiland, is going to tie a damsel to railroad tracks.
And you won't know which damsel till it's too late.
Not me! Ah! And with that, I would like to introduce all of you. I'm 9 of 12, September McCready. This is Sean Weiland. We met on ANTP and have had great adventures, and now we're off to a new adventure. This podcast launched. You can find it in your podcatchers now. It's called Tipple Theory. And we're going to do a very special show for you right now.
The reason I'm doing...
Wrong one. Tipple Theory is an exploration of the history and practice of creating alcohol around the world. On this show, we'll share some of the history of how your favorite beverages came to be, as well as techniques professional bartenders use to elevate your poison of choice into an experience worth savoring.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Tipple Theory. With your hosts, I'm Sean Weiland.
I'm September.
You're at the next part in purple, so I'm
Oh, I am producing at the same time. We're here today to raise some money for the Children's Miracle Network while we launch our new podcast. So please go to dcstreamathon.org/9 of 12. That's NINEOF12 to donate to this great cause right now. And go check our Patreon out at patreon.com/tippletheory. Also go ahead.
Evil mustache time. Also go and please visit tippletheory.com so you can find our show, which should be live now on your podcatcher of your choice. If not, maybe a couple hours ago even, because that's when I hit do the thing.
I checked.
So today's topic is the origin what we're going to be talking about today is the origin of champagne, specifically as a celebration, the toast to bring in the new year. And to start off the show, as we talked about before, Esther and I, before we started the show, was I wanted to open a bottle of champagne for you and show you kind of the quote-unquote proper way to do it. It isn't always the most fun way, but I worked in fine dining for a long time and as a bartender, so we had to do this at every table and even behind the bar when we brought champagne out to people. So you have your serviette, which is basically your towel, usually draped over your arm. You show everyone your champagne. Yes, this is the thing. That's the thing. Yes, I ordered that thing. Excellent. Great. So from there, most people will start to fiddle and look around and go, okay, where is that little pull tab that I used to open the foil? Great. You can do that. However, every waiter and a bartender has a wine key. So most of the time, we're going to take that and go around just under where that cage is under the foil, and go ahead and just pull that back. That's going to save you about 20 seconds of looking like a doofus. So now that's done, we're going to untwist the cage. When you start doing that, you're going to want your thumb over the top just to prevent any unnecessary or unwanted poppage. About 6 half twists. You get that done? So it's always done that way. From here, you don't need to take the cage off. The cage actually, I'm going to tell you, it's nice to leave on because it's going to give you a little bit extra traction as you're trying to take the cork off. You're going to put your serviette over the top of your hand, like so. Transfer hands to putting your hand over your bottle. Sorry, I need to go slightly under the camera line of sight here just to switch hands. I'm right-handed. Now I'm holding everything with that hand. I'm going to grip the bottom of the bottle with your alternate hand. The one on top is going to twist the cork and pull up gently. September already got hers. I was trying to be all gentle. So now, the last part, it's not quite open yet, not quite off. This should be nice and soft. This should be just like a little baby's fart. It shouldn't be a giant pop. You don't want it to go explode everywhere. Plus, I'm in my sound booth in front of two very expensive microphones. I don't want this spilling everywhere. And I'm doing this live, so I'm very nervous. And I already got it, so you probably didn't even hear that at all. Could have been it. And of course, your cork are in your serviette. And then, of course, you would present that to your guests and go, here, would you like to check the thingamabob, or do you want to hold on to the thing? Your cork and cage. Or, as a server might, go tuck it in their apron or their back pocket and proceed to pour. Now, I have a coupe here with me. A lot of people would pour to a flute. The last part of this is very important. Besides, when you pour, facing the label towards your guest, you should not have to stop pouring at any point. If you're doing this correctly, it's one slow, gentle pour over your very expensive audio equipment. So that it doesn't fuzz up too much and you never have to stop until you reach your appropriate pour line. It is right about there. Little twist as you lift up. And you've now opened and properly served your champagne. Cheers, everyone. Happy almost New Year's.
Cheers. Flute for me.
Yes.
I brought a funny flute. Well, to me, a funny flute. These were, we got
Fancy
married on December
You did?
21st, 1999, and someone gifted us Y2K flutes.
That's,
So-
yeah, I would keep those too. Shoot, I wish.
To the disaster that did not happen.
The marriage?
No, Y2K.
Oh, right. Sorry. I was like, wow, that's fucked up. I think they're watching. Sorry. This is my first tipple of the evening. Oh no, I just swore. Am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's. For the
I
children,
know,
but
and
they don't
Twitch
need- they
used
don't
to
need
let me
that.
put an explicit tag, but now it tells me I don't have permission to do that anymore, so fuck them. It's their problem.
All right. Bitch, you heard it here first.
Okay, so on with the show.
Yes. All right. So we always like to start off with recapping how our weeks have been, maybe the things we've learned, or just how life is going. September, what's up with you?
Well, like I said, we're raising some money. I just saw an exciting thing in the chat, by the way. Somebody donated $2,023.24 to someone on the team, on the Diamond Club team. So, woo, that's exciting. A lot closer to our big goal for the team. I did a fun show this morning with Cyrenex, one of the other Sean W's even. You guys can argue about the spelling another time of your first name. And we played Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes with Red Fraggle and the Jen and Sign, and it was such a great time. And we exceeded our goal, like I mentioned in the pre-show. So, yay. What else? I got some cool Christmas presents, including a cassette player. So it's a turntable with a built-in CD and a USB and a cassette player, so I can actually digitize some of my stuff from it. And man, the nostalgia. I got out my old cassettes and I found there used to be this thing at Disney called Superstar Karaoke. And you could go and sing and you could get a tape of it. And
oh my gosh.
Tipsily sang Almost Paradise with a coworker and was able to play that and send him some video on Facebook of so that was I had such a great time just doing that on Christmas, just digging through old mixtapes and stuff. That the nostalgia was very, very strong. So what have you been up to?
I also did Christmas. Flew my son out to visit, which was nice. He doesn't live with me. He lives in Arizona with his almost an other family. I guess that is kind of what it is. But that was really cool to have him out and my daughter at the same time. As part of entertaining and theoretically having fun while you were here, I have a lot of old video game systems, as that's my day job now, is working in video games. I see some of the stuff behind me if you're watching the live stream. So I have a PS1 Classic, which is like the re-release console where they put all this, not all, they put like 20 games on a Android-ish PS1 that was licensed by Sony. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And of course, the first thing I looked up when I got it was, well, how do you hack it and put on other PS1 games? So I've also done that. And I hooked it up to a projector. And I was like, oh, this will be great. Like 120-inch projection of PS1 games. And it looks awful. It looks terrible because those games were not meant for that. So I was showing my son, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Like, it's not. I appreciate you, but you don't have to do that. This looks terrible. Tony Hawk was so fun. So we did that. And then just the last couple days, doing research on the champagne for the show, because I don't know everything. The algorithm that is the interwebs also knows that I just research a lot of alcohol stuff. And, of course, I find out that there is a distillery in North Carolina. Hey, children, there's a child miracle right there behind me. Hello, child. She's also having a sleepover, so there's a munchkin.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
You need something?
Can you watch Harry Potter?
Yeah, as long as you can find it. You have to. You've got to spell it and type it in the search menu. Yeah. Harry. If you type in Harry, you'll find it. Okay. Harry. 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 I am doing a show though. Okay. So when you go into Amazon, you'll see a little magnifying glass logo, and you have to navigate to that and then press the center button to select it. Okay. This other child's gonna poke me. All right, go watch Harry Potter. Okay, thank you.
Bye. Special guest star.
Yeah, she's adorable. So, okay, so let me do the thing briefly then, because we only have 1 hour. Basically, I found out that there's this distillery in North Carolina, or West Virginia, sorry, that is making a new spirit, theoretically. And because of their process and what they're doing, and it's all the local stuff, they want to have a new domain classification for this spirit. So they're trying to go through the whole state and then federal approval process to do that, which is related to champagne, because champagne is what we call it because of the region it comes from and because of its legal status that it applied for just over 100 years ago. Like its actual legal status is historically relatively new, which I thought was fascinating researching that. We'll get more into that. But so this spirit company in West Virginia is also trying to do it. Yes, baby love? Yes, I put it in the fridge. Okay, real quick, pet the cat. He tried to bite you.
He's still fat.
My cat is fat. And I guess that's important for everyone to know tonight.
Yeah.
I have a fat cat. And I adopted her fat. I saw the fat cat at the shelter, and I was like, I need this fat cat. So yeah, this distillery is trying to do a thing with a new
Neat.
domain specification, a new style classification. And I thought that was interesting.
I'm surprised it
Yeah.
hasn't happened before now.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to get it. I have not been able to find actual literature on what they say their process is unique for creating the spirit, which would be interesting. Otherwise, they're essentially distilling or fermenting and distilling maple sap. There's tons of maple syrup spirits out there, but they're using maple sap to do it. So okay, neat. It sounds like they're going to have to say this is unique enough.
Right. And that is very
as
difficult to do.
As is.
So.
Yeah. And I couldn't buy any online. So researching that, I was like, well, I want to try to get it. So let's. Are you ready to dig into champagne, the drink of the evening?
Let's dig into champagne and toasting and why that's a thing and how dangerous champagne is.
Yes. I didn't do documentation on that. I guess I do know that. Did you make notes on that?
No, but it'll come
The
up.
actual dangerous part. Oh, okay, cool. I mean, so cause I started going through this like a timeline essentially, just because there's sparkling alcohol in general has been around for a long time. I mean, and I kind of started with the first origins of champagne as we researched it, but beer is sparkling, and beer's been around longer than champagne. So, the idea of a fermented beverage with bubbles in it is quite
Okay,
ancient.
so the thing with champagne being dangerous is that it's fermented in the bottle. And so it is very volatile and would explode and people would get hurt. And it became kind of a... When it started, and it used to be just for rich people, that was part of why, because of the danger of this process. It was a very exclusive thing to be able to get someone to do for you after it was discovered in the 1500s. So it took a while for that to evolve out of it. But my understanding also is the weird stuff I learned about it being, like, we all know now, like, they christen a ship with it, break bottle, and that's because it was like holy water. It was a substitute for holy water. This exclusivity wasn't just an aristocratic thing, but it was supposed to be this religious process, and it was only drank in specific religious ceremonies for a long time, and was symbolically a substitute for holy water in different ceremonies, including christenings of ships.
Right, and it's. I think it's funny because at least the research I was finding, it was that sort of transition into when that became a thing to use champagne was partly related to the French Revolution and the idea that this beverage was a part of the bourgeoisie, the rich class, and religious ceremonies. And the way of democratizing that was saying, well, we don't need the priest. We can use something else that represents that, but is not as, I guess I don't want to say visually, but like it's not exactly this high aristocracy. We don't have to have this person that we've paid lots of money come do it. We can just use the thing, and then we can smash it. Ha-ha.
Ha-ha. I love the quote you found in there from When Wine Became French. It's like, royalty loved the novelty of sparkling wine. It was said to have positive effects on women's beauty and on man's wit. So,
but not man's beauty.
Women's?
Right,
What?
I said, but not man. But yeah, but like it's.
But not man's beauty. No.
Even the objectification within that quote, I thought was interesting.
But it's like the same old with any fermented beverage, right? Like the more we drink, the prettier and funnier we get.
Yup. So it's so yes. So in researching this, I know. So we had initial findings of it in the 1500s, but the first documented, and I'm a stickler for this, or at least I always try to cite it because there might be things that fall under the umbrella of like, well, this drink is like this, but the first time it gets written down and it's named, I think really adds to officiality and statement of what a beverage is. So in 1662, Christopher Merritt, who was a scientist for the Royal Society of London, discovered that adding sugar to a fermenting wine, and when bottled, promoted effervescence, lending to champagne's signature sparkle. So basically, he's the first person to document this is champagne and this is roughly how it can happen. That's important because 30 years, or actually 35 years later, is when the first documented French champagne appears. And England and France are not that far apart, excuse me. And Champagne is in northern France, so it's actually, it's fairly close. It's not English Channel close, but it's pretty close. So there's a 35-year gap where Dom Perignon, the French monk, who, in a lot of, depending on the webpage or the literature that you read, will be cited as the originator of Champagne, is not technically the originator of Champagne. I say technically because Champagne, France, has to be from Champagne, but that classification actually doesn't come until almost 250 years later. So, it is and it isn't. Now, they are right and they're not in that. And in England, they could have easily been importing Champagne grapes. So, it's close. So the records are there, but Dom Perignon, by the way.
Well, and there's a difference between the evolution of language and the legality situation of the region and how the term champagne was used that fills in those blanks for your timeline. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't called champagne even though it was already invented. It was called champagne later.
Yes.
But the legal designation was at a different time entirely, and then refers to the same thing, but not necessarily the same thing. So, yeah, it's a difficult timeline to do in your stickly way.
It is, and I wasn't trying to be super stickly about it, but I like to note when things are at least started to get written down and going, all right, now we know what this thing is. Mm-hmm. Defined. There we go. So as you already mentioned, and you feel free to interrupt me because I made a long slew of notes, and I don't want to talk the whole time. So it was another roughly 100 years to perfect. So from the late 1600s to the late 1700s to perfect the correct ratio or the perfect ratio of sugar to wine in a bottle to get it to ferment and sparkle, or basically secondary ferment, but not explode. and I wasn't able to find a citation for it, but I would also imagine that it's not just the ratio that's going to be a big part, but also the shape of the bottle, because that changed over time. That's was part of the problem for exploding, is that champagne bottles are shaped differently. They have that kind of wide butt on the bottom, taper towards the top, and they always have that really fat dimple with heavier glass on the bottom, because that's usually where there's a seam in the glass itself when it's made. So there's a much thicker portion of material there to help.
Yeah, I've always noticed how much thicker and heavier champagne and sparkling wine bottles are, but didn't really realize how volatile it was.
Mm-hmm. When you think of like someone doing like a saber opening for a champagne bottle, like there's enough pressure in there, just hitting the glass the right way causes that entire neck to pop off. Like that's a lot. That's a lot of pressure inside a bottle. So it took some time for them to figure that out. So during this time, this is something I thought was interesting, and I did not realize. The French and the English kind of evolving at the same time, but slightly separately, as regionality things tend to happen. The French developed a sweet version of champagne, so with more sugar or residual sugars in their bottles, and the English developed the dry version, which is what we all tend to drink today, generally. People do make sweet champagnes, but the most popular for the last 100 or so years has been quite dry. And that was the English method that prevailed in the end and became the dominant style that we know today.
I definitely prefer brut champagnes myself.
I like a little sweetness. I like a not quite an Asti, but somewhere
Oof.
in that kind of Prosecco range. Only because I've had
Asti's like
super
a
dry
headache
ones.
waiting to happen.
That's also true. I would agree with that. I don't drink a ton of sparkling champagne. Even the bottle that I opened is half, just because it will give me a headache.
I'm a little
So
disappointed. This one I like, the Cook's Brut, seems a lot less dry this year, and usually I get the Grand Reserve, but it's getting harder and harder to find. The Grand Reserve was something that was bought for my wedding, that had like a drop of cognac in each bottle and it really just did something special in a nice dry champagne, and I can never find it. But anyway, I digress. We've got about 3 minutes until New Year's celebration. We'll have a little toast for.
Got you. Okay, so 100 years later, they perfect the bottling and the sugaring and the effervescent stuff. Also, right around that same time as that gets perfected is when the French Revolution happens. So it's towards the end of the Revolution, which is in 1794, that also the popularization, the democratization of the consumption of champagne starts to happen. It doesn't happen immediately. It doesn't happen overnight. This is pre-internet, even good worldwide postal service. Things are not happening super fast. But this is when it starts to happen. So you have that perfection of the ratio. You have that cultural impulse to let everyone try to consume champagne. And then, of course, they breaking the champagne Brits over the bows of ships, but also at weddings and at celebrations in general. Pardon me, the bubbles just got to me. So, 100 years later again. Another 100... This is like happening in spurts. Actually, not quite. So 1794, around 1860, and I didn't cite this, and I apologize. But roughly at the start of the Industrial Revolution, so 18, or actually more like 1880-ish, in there, is when you start to have better and mass manufacturing of bottles. So that starts to help improve distribution as well. About 30 years after that, 1911, there's riots in France where farm workers and winemakers are trying to basically, I almost said lobby, but that wasn't really a thing at the time, but essentially call for the legal classification of champagne from champagne in France. And not, because we've talked about, or we will have had talked about, it's time!
It's time, it's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Let's give a big Happy New Year to regions of Canada, including the Maritimes. Yes! Prince Edward Island, where my in-laws are. New Brunswick, Newfoundland, where the hospital and Children's Miracle Network helped my husband as a child. Labrador with exceptions, Nova Scotia. I already said that. Venezuela, Bolivia, Amazonas, Brazil, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Trinidad and Tobago, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guyana, Guadalupe, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, small region of the Netherlands, Antigua, Barbuda, British Virgin Islands, small region of Greenland, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Anguilla, Dominica, Bermuda, where I visited in October. Hello to my new friends there, St. Martin, Montserrat, Caribbean, Netherlands, Aruba, St. Bartholomew, Grenada, St. Martin, Curaçao, Barbados, and Martinique. Happy New Year!
Oh, man. I'm going to throw a special Happy New Year to Hans and Lise over at Hotel de Champs in Dominica in the Caribbean. That's where one of the places I used to bartend. So Happy New Year's.
Oh, nice. And I do want to, I will post the link and talk briefly about how this stream was started. A big part of it that people don't always remember is the Diamond Club wants to make sure that none of you, that no one we know ever spends New Year's alone. And that's part of why we do this stream. It is very important that you all know you are loved and valued. If you are alone and in crisis, feel free to reach out to anyone in this network, or dial 988 in the US, or contact the suicidepreventionlifeline.org. If you're struggling, if you're alone, you don't have to stay alone. We care. We love you. So there we go. And if you can, please help out the Children's Miracle Network through extralife.org today.
Now it feels like it's not even important to talk about champagne now.
It is. We're
But
celebrating how
topic
much we love
of the show.
everybody.
Do.
And I really appreciate Ren going ahead and adding all those cities for me. We've got a resource for when these New Year's events happen and what countries. And I was like, what do you mean part of Canada? Like, those parts of Canada are very relevant to me. My family lives there. And he looked up and really stretched out and got all these details for me. So I am happy to read that and include people we know. And look, it included people that you know. And Bermuda, people I met recently. So, champagne, do it for the children.
Legal. Early 1900s, right around the same time. And this is like 1911, like I said. Cafe Saint Martin in New York City. New York City! Yeah, New York City. And so it was opened in 1888, started by two French brothers. It was actually like, I think around 1903, 1905 is when they started to really get hard-nosed into carrying many varietals of champagne, having, I think, the most champagne in the East Coast, if not in the U.S., and making it their core celebration for New Year's Eve, and their core celebration and their core way of serving alcohol in their restaurant in general. But New Year's Eve was their big thing. They only served champagne on New Year's Eve. And it was the go-to place. It was the posh. It was the restaurant. It was. I'm trying not to swear now all of a sudden, but they helped popularize the idea of this is how you celebrate New Year's Eve in the U.S. And we still do it.
Got the
not
marketing
that it wasn't
down.
used before.
Like, I was reading about that, how they marketed that as being the New Year's drink really is what we owe toasting with champagne at New Year's too in the U.S. Like, they created that hype.
And there was a quote that I saw. It was from another article, but from the time is, you were so lucky to get a reservation at that restaurant that if you did, you drank whatever was given to you. Yeah, cool. That's a pretty cool way to do it.
I want to ask, you found a record of toasting the New Year in Julius Caesar's reign, like in 49 BC or something. Like, what would they have toasted with then?
I mean, I would think, I was about to call it fast wine, but like not really aged wine would be my guess. Like fresh wine, something that was newly fermented would be my guess. Mostly because New Year's, this time of year, they're still North Equator, so they're still in winter like we are. You already would have been post-harvest by 2-3 months. So you're just getting fresh wine at that point. You're in your winter seasons. So you might have like some ice wine, or not late harvest wine. You might have something sweet, which would probably be more decadent but maybe reflective of the occasion. But I would think a newer sweet wine would be most likely what they're toasting with. Probably not something fermented. Probably not even champagne.
See, I ask because it is a follow-up from this morning's stream. Someone asked me what the earliest fermented beverage in the world was, and did we talk about that, and was it mead? I was like, no, probably not mead, because, I mean, honey in particular, like, probably not the first thing we were fermenting, and more likely a wine or fruit. So I just thought I'd draw that line.
It's weird, because I do remember watching a history documentary on alcohol, one of the many, and they were talking about it was most likely bread that fermented first, like carried in pots on some trade route between East and Europe,
closer to
West.
beer, yeah.
So closer to beer. However, fruit can ferment on the vine and then be consumed to mild effect.
And observing animals doing that was probably real early.
So it would be more technically correct to say that animals, man or not, first discovered fermentation and getting somewhat drunk. So that would be probably the first kind of alcohol, just because it comes from it bacteria that naturally exists. It's a byproduct of their digestive process. So, yeah, probably fermented fruit because it's easier to make fruit than bread.
So
Already got to
back
do shit to it.
Cafe Martin.
Yes.
I found that their menu offered 69 varieties of champagne alone. And all of them were imported from France. So they were sticklers for like the champagne thing. Even though...
For true champagne or pure champagne.
Right. Even though that wasn't designated until 30 years later.
Oh, yeah, after the founding of their bar, yeah.
Yeah.
Or bar restaurant. Mm-hmm.
But, you know.
And that's like a lot of things. That was an ongoing process. So it's like same thing for whiskey now in Japan, getting their domain of origin set up to say like, no, it has to be made here to be called a Japanese whiskey. You can't be in the Netherlands making Japanese whiskey, because if it's not legally defined, then you can do it. That's just kind of how it rolls. It's kind of like with, I'm gonna go back to whiskey because both of us drink a lot of whiskey, but the same idea. Like for a long time, people thought bourbon had to come from Tennessee or Kentucky. But legally, it only has to be made in the U.S. and 51% corn. So,
and a couple weeks,
same thing,
you get to learn all about that on a different episode of our show that we'll release.
Right. So the same champagne had the same issue and argument, and then had to get classified to say, like, look, it's a champagne grape which comes from and is grown in this region, because you could technically export the grape and grow it somewhere else. So in that case, they also have to define it has to be within this boundary, produced here. To I want to say maintain its purity. That sounds icky saying that out loud.
It does.
But that's the thing is, you can go many places and make a sparkling wine, and that could rival French champagne, so to speak. And even some French champagne houses have vineyards not in France. Chandon is a good one. The white label, Moet and Chandon, French champagne house, has vineyards in California. They make Chandon, just without the Moet. And they produce sparkling wine, and it's delicious. It's not the same. You know, you can put them side by side. You're like, oh, okay, well, I see what you're doing. But is it good? I think so.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. And it's the same with a lot of wines, because when you move a grape and you're growing it somewhere else, it has different characteristics. And it can be more to your preference grown somewhere else and in a different year, right? So if you want to, there are many things that you can look into for the one you like. Maybe it's a champagne grape originally, and then you can say, haha, see, it's not that big a deal. It's just a legal designation if you really want to be that way about it. Now, Prosecco is all the rage right now. So much Prosecco everywhere. I mean, it's the only sparkling thing I can get locally a lot of the time. It's on tap in a lot of places. I so far have found it to be generally inferior. Some I've actively disliked. I had one earlier tonight at Bottles and Taps locally, and it's fine. But I did learn during our research that there is a distinct difference that Prosecco can have, not all of it does, but Prosecco can have CO2 added, where sparkling wines, champagnes cannot. Those are, like we talked about before, with the process of champagne and why it was difficult to get to the right amount of sugar and why it was dangerous to produce. It's fermented in the bottle to get the sparkle. Prosecco can have CO2 added. And I would bet dollars to donuts that the very inferior ones I've tasted did that.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to, I mean, there's a lot of things that dictate price. Marketing and demand, or marketing creating demand, can be a part of that. But just when it comes to the process of creating champagne, I think there can be a small allowance for, like, if you have a good wine and you can carbonate it and it tastes good. Okay, well, we can't call it champagne anyway. So is that the worst thing ever?
No, and if it works fine,
I think it's I
great.
do think it's sneaky. I don't like it, but I'm like, all right, well, if you don't want to be spending $80 up for a bottle of champagne, if you just want to spend $20 for a nice beverage or $10 a glass, sure, okay. Now that being said, I'm also a big fan of cava, which is a Spanish sparkling wine that I think in many cases can rival champagne for a much lesser cost. And it's not usually quite as dry as champagne. Again, and I already expressed that I don't like the super dry champagnes, but I think it's fantastic. And there's a lot of regions, like I said, like it was already documented 1500, so 62 years before Dom Perignon said, "Hey, I figured this thing out." Other people were making sparkling wine. So there are other sparkling wine traditions besides champagne that you can engage with and enjoy it more than just, well, they're just copying champagne. Not necessarily.
Yeah, and I'm not just dishing on,
Oh, yeah,
Prosecco,
no, I didn't
'cause
say you
Prosecco, the actual designation, the difference between champagne and Prosecco, the short version is it's from Veneta. It's from a place in Italy, as opposed to champagne being from the Champagne region of France. Prosecco comes primarily from a certain region in Italy, but it also just has this, you can add extra. You can just stick CO2 in it.
I was thinking of, I didn't realize, I thought you could still have, what would you call it? So like for champagne, you can have American champagne, as long as the label says something besides just champagne, then there's a lot of legal loopholes for getting around your sparkling wine labeling. So if it's done in the champagne method, or champagne method, literally it'll just say, or like whatever the French word for method looks like method, it's just pronounced differently.
Right.
Méthode de champagne. I'm making it Spanish with a French accent. That's not good.
It's the mustache. I blame the mustache.
Right? Maybe. But I know cava's the same way. It has to be from one particular region of Spain. Used to be called cava, and I've had. Well, anyway, yeah. So there's a lot of legal definitions that come for each one, but they're distinct and they're lovely and they're great. And champagne is interesting because it has probably one of the oldest documented and then legalized or legally sorted out.
Sorted out.
Suable traditions.
There you go.
They can sue you. So I learned, I think, a bunch of new things. I've talked about it, but is there anything else, like just fun facts that you kind of picked up as you were researching for champagne?
Well, the big thing was the holy water thing, like that it was a replacement for holy water in ceremonies. I would have never in a million years thought of that, even though, I mean, I grew up Catholic. Like, wine is like the blood of Christ. I mean, it should have not been weird to think that it would be a replacement for something holy, but that it was considered holy water. And we've talked a lot about, and it keeps coming up, this aqua vitae, right? The water of life. The water of life is a run through with so many alcoholic beverages. So it shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. What about you? What did you learn?
I was really trying to establish in my brain and through research how champagne grapes specifically could have gotten to England. Just England doesn't really have a lot of good spots to grow grapes in general. I mean, and as we will have had talked about when our whiskey episode comes out, like there's a reason they don't grow grapes, and that's whiskey kind of came from that region. Grapes couldn't grow there, so and England and France and the whatever zones of monarchy control kind of changed hands around there. I was kind of curious to see if and when England ever actually controlled that specific region of France. And as far as I could tell, no. But a lot of historians that I kind of came across were like, well, there's not the legal definitions of countries that we have now that they had back then. There were little fealties that were loyal to a crown. And sometimes they were, and sometimes they weren't, and sometimes there was backstabbing. So you couldn't really say they owned this region because that region technically owned themselves or were even split up into smaller regions. But the part of Champagne, France that we now call that area was given to France from Austria in 1314. So it's 700 years French, as we would define it now. But even so it wasn't always even part of France. So there's, oops, I just dropped my mouse. But so there's at least to say that there has been changing hands there, and it's possible that Champagne grapes were getting exported or purchased from the Champagne region and going to England to make their original bubblies. It's totally possible. I also thought it was interesting, as I mentioned and had documented, and I'm really, oh, there's my mouse. It landed in my pencil holder. Oh, my God. I was nervous for a second there. So, as I was reading about Dom Perignon and England and the different documenting and who did what first, that originally, and what Dom Perignon was actually doing at the time that he discovered Champagne, was that he was actually trying to get rid of bubbles in wine. Like, trying to figure out why is it when you bottle this fermented grape, or they knew what wine was, but this beverage, why do they keep getting bubbles? Because as you mentioned, it's dangerous. Things could explode in storage, and you don't necessarily want your wine cellar blowing up. So it was actually, from a lot of minds, considered a bad thing at the time. You didn't want your bottles exploding. You didn't want bubbles showing up. And it's kind of like if you ever had something ferment in your fridge.
A bad thing.
Yeah, it's not great. Well, I mean, like, I like kimchi. That's an example of something else that can ferment and does ferment actively in a can. But you open it up and you're like, oh, it's fizzy.
Okay.
But the fizziness is what I'm saying. The bubbles, okay. The champagne bubbles.
Fizzing okay. Exploding not so much.
But so bubbles was considered a problem. And he was actually trying to find a way to get rid of that. And then people were going like, wait a minute. I like the bubbles. They feel funny on my mustache. But I thought it was interesting that was considered a bad thing. I didn't really know that before.
That's funny because, like, I get it.
Divine inspiration.
Because I've brewed mead, right? And I've done it from, instead of adding yeast, done it from whatever it got in the air. Kind of like, the same process of making sourdough. You can brew alcohol in your house with whatever it catches. It might not turn out. You might get a terrible strain of something. But the first time I got a strain of something that went fizzy, I was a little worried. Like, the indication that something might have gone bad. And you can only tell from, I didn't have a lab to look at the bacteria. Like, you can taste it. Like, does it taste bad or is it just fizzy? Because that can be okay. And so it's interesting to think about how way back then that happened and was a discovery that they had to then basically do a whole bunch of science to try to replicate. He said it took 100 years for them to figure out how much sugar to make it do the right thing.
Fun fact I knew, but we didn't talk about. Functionally, we have two different glasses. I have a coupe. You have a flute. They serve different purposes in drinking champagne. One of the most obvious might be just balance-wise. One's a little bit easier to hold than the other. Technically, the flute is easier to balance because the coupe is kind of like a martini glass. Right? It's wibbly-wobbly. But also the surface area. I forget the technical name for bubbles leaving the wine and coming up and doing its little effervescent thing. But flutes actually help keep the carbonation within the suspension of the beverage longer. The part of the reason to have flutes is as you're sipping it, you get your fizziness the whole time, whereas it kind of dissipates faster in a coupe.
Oh, well, that makes sense, because it's a larger surface area, so there's less surface tension than there is in a flute, which would keep the effervescence in check.
Right. Yeah. And if you ever look at a flute, there's normally like 4 little columns bubbles going up. Whereas like in mine, it's kind of hard to tell on camera, but it's a whole storm cloud of bubbles, and that'll dissipate pretty. Yeah, so you can see it super well on yours. Yeah, but for me, it's just a mass of bubbles all over the place. And those are all coming up from the bottom. So, yeah. So mine's going to go flatter much quicker, which I don't mind. I don't need to be burping this all up in a minute. I already got one hiccup.
So,
I don't mind it.
I don't mind it either. So where are we in the notes here?
So we're at the point where we normally would say like, oh, this is the featured cocktail. I already showed you how to open it. There's a couple other things I did want to mention as far as champagne cocktails go.
Yeah, we've got a little time, and so yeah,
this will be quick.
Champagne cocktails and additives that I wouldn't mind mentioning, and replacements, and then we can move along.
Okay. Well, so champagne, by itself, great. Champagne orange juice, mimosa. Champagne and cranberry, popular during the holidays, called a poinsettia. There is something called a champagne cocktail as well. Not a cocktail that uses champagne as a float or a topper or whatever. There's actually a champagne cocktail, and it's champagne, sugar, usually granulated, but simple syrup is fine, bitters. That can be the cocktail itself, or with a little bit of brandy or some other kind of very sweet aperitivo as an additive. And that is a champagne cocktail versus like a French 75 or something else where you float it on or put it on top. Yeah, just fun things to know. What did you want to say about additives?
So there are a few things I like to do beside mimosas with sparkling wines and champagnes. Some years back, I was introduced into Palma. It's a pomegranate liqueur, and a little dash of that in your champagne is a wonderful thing that I did many anniversaries. Do that and pop a few berries in it. It is a lovely surprise for your guests. I have kids, and we always get them something, and you get the sparkling grape juice, and they put it all in the end caps. And after years and years of getting something bubbly for them to toast with, we let them stay up late. They really prefer sparkling cider, as it turned out, which is not always as easy to find, but grab it when it's around at Thanksgiving for the holidays. It can be a nice switch up, especially if they don't like grape juice. And then things that you can make or find. So non-alcoholic options, while I'm on those. I know them. This bottle I found at Aldi is called a French soda. I grew up near a coffee shop that had Italian sodas. So the idea is basically you've got club soda, and then you add simple syrups that are flavored to it. And this is a wonderful, bubbly, non-alcoholic option. This is a lemon elderflower that I got at Aldi in a nice, fancy bottle. But I make my own simple syrups at home all the time with honeysuckle I picked from the yard, with lavender I got from the garden. Make a simple syrup and add some of that to some club soda, and you have a beautiful non-alcoholic option for you and your friends to toast with as well.
I've been seeing some champagne alternatives come out too. A couple I've tried. Well, I've actually tried a lot. A couple I've liked, but they don't always taste great a lot of times because they're trying to be like wine. But then they're doing usually some post-fermentation removal process that takes a lot of the natural flavors that would be in there away. Sometimes they're just alcohol soluble, and you can't get around getting rid of those flavors while getting rid of the alcohol. There are some good ones out there, and I've been noticing just in grocery stores in general, more and more of the wine section having more than just one bottle of alcohol-free wine. Now there's like 10, which is appreciable. That's a big difference. It's an order of magnitude difference in the last 5 years. So that's one good thing to come out of the last 5 years.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool. And so there are some decent sparkling wine type alternatives if you're someone that still wants something that's more wine like. But also I like that soda suggestion too. I think that can be lovely.
Cool. I also wanted to mention that I noticed earlier it's Waltz Day.
Oh yeah.
Last day of 2023 is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Just hobbling towards the end, like we're gonna get there.
So this has been really fun and exciting. Let's go into talking about a few last things. Please go to dcstreamathon.org/9 of 12 to donate today. We didn't have any donors during this stream, unfortunately, this evening, but this will be open going forward, and tomorrow, and all the way through the new year, actually. I'm going to go ahead and put up an ExtraLife page for 2024 as well, to continue spreading the love to my local children's hospital at Levine. And what else? Go to our Patreon at patreon.com/TippleTheory. I'm so excited our new show is out. We're going to be releasing weekly. We have, we're putting it out in seasons, right?
Yep. We have 12 episodes for season 1. And we'll be putting them out weekly up until, we might take a 1-week break, but we'll pretty much be pumping out for the next 4 months. Is that how that math's out? 3 months.
Yeah.
I understand math. Yeah. And we'll be talking this whole season, the whole first season is kind of like the basics. And of course, we do a ton of research, as you just heard, but it's what should I have behind my bar? What are the things that I need? And where do they come from? Why are they important?
We have so much fun doing it. Yeah. And our Patreon, we're going to have, like, you can get access to PDF of all the cocktails we talk about. We have a featured cocktail each week. So that's fun, and access to little drinky streams where we make the cocktails, right? A little happy hour action for our patrons.
Some of the pre-recording from the episodes, just watching us troubleshoot tech or make drinks for ourselves for the episode that have nothing to do with the episode.
But it's
that
fun.
Happens sometimes. No, it's great. I love it. And of course we have a website that I made, so apologies. It's there. It reflects my personality. How about that? I'm made at work. And of course, you did use our intro. So our intro, which you hear on all of our podcasts.
Oh yeah.
Features a musician friend of mine, Scott Gesser, and you can find his stuff, Bandcamp. It's either ./Scott Gesser, Bandcamp.com. Wonderful musician, and did our theme music for the show, and he's very nice and agreed to do it, and it sounds like an Irish jam band, so I'm down.
I love it so much. I love that song. I was playing it for people, like, if Sean and I had an actual bar, I feel like this is the stuff we'd be playing.
Yeah. And cheers to Shane McGowan.
Okay, I think W. Scottus is live.
It's 10:30.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 5 minutes, so that's
we have
cool.
5 more minutes. I thought it was dead on the line. No?
No. Good. We started at 10:35 to 11:35. I was just looking to see, making sure everything is ready for the transition. But I'm going to go ahead and play this little promo and hopefully drum up a little more support for the Children's Miracle Network right now.
The reason I'm doing the Streamathon this year is I want to provide a place for people to have fun at the end of the year.
We stream because we care.
Just like every year, the Streamathon will be a ridiculous amount of fun.
We're going to raise some money for the Children's Miracle Network and just have a great time.
Because everyone deserves to spend New Year's Eve with someone.
And I can't hold my liquor, so
join us.
Come hang out.
We're going to have action and more.
You can help sick kids have a happy new year.
And who could possibly pass up a good cause like that?
Go to dcstreamathon.org and donate now.
Thanks for helping out the kids.
On the Diamond Club New Year's Eve Streamathon.
don't forget to donate and have fun.
Woohoo! Well, that's exciting. Looks like he's got a countdown going. I don't know if he's ready for me to raid. So we can just hang around. Bullshit.
Excellent.
Until I'm sure. Someone will give me a cue.
I was all worried that
Hando,
we
the
wouldn't
AV
get
guy.
all the
Yeah, right?
facts.
The guy in the background with the stockings. That's sweet. Look at all the photographers. Like, is this a Ren Fair ball? Is it?
Oh, the waltz day. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry. I'm
waltz
like, what
day
are we talking
picture.
about? I mean, I see pantaloons.
It's like period wear, but then look at all the guys in the background
Yeah.
cameras.
Maybe it's like a waltz off, like fundraiser. Maybe that's actually what they're doing, is they're fundraising, and by dressing up and waltzing until they can't waltz anymore.
Maybe. Till they fall down. All right. Well, it looks like W. Scottus is live. I want to thank W. Scottus for Willie took over a lot of the organizational stuff that Ritual Misery has been doing for years. Those guys, Ken Amos, also helped, but he really picked up the ball and kept it rolling so we could continue to raise money for this great cause. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you all and hearing from you about our new show, Tipple Theory. Thanks, Sean.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and thank you everyone for watching and listening. Have a happy new year.
Happy New Year! Cheers.
Cheers.
Raid, push the right button. I have to push the right button. The raid has been created.
You're muted.
No, I'm not.
You're a raid. Checking in.
Checking in. What? Who is that?
What do we do now?
Oh. Raid. Boop. Okay. We raided into Willie Scott. I'm going to stop the stream and stop recording.